So give us your understanding of what happened and what led to us being here this morning in Mr. Haygood's case.
Sure. Mr. Haygood's case obviously was pled a week or two ago, and some individuals contacted the court saying they were upset they didn't get notified of the hearing. We were able to show that was not true. There are some disgruntled individuals reaching out to the court, sharing some false information, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. What led you to believe that it's people that are just trying to get some bad information in there?
We were able to look at the communications ahead of time. We are familiar with those individuals, and we have documented communication with them, and actually with one of them even calling the defendant while he's in jail to discuss the plea and when it's going to be. So we have recordings of them being aware of when it's going to happen.
Okay. I believe there was information too about one of the cases that was dismissed too,
Yes.
and it was that individual talking about not being aware.
Yes.
Could you clarify about that?
The individual the court was referring to was an individual that was alleged by law enforcement to be a victim, was uncooperative with the investigation, was actually supportive of the defendant, and in accordance with her wishes, that case was not going to go forward. And this individual supports the defendant and therefore is making untrue claims after the plea, in her mind, I'm sure, to somehow help the defendant in some way.
Okay.
And I know that it was discussed in the last interview that I had with Mr. Vance. He talked about the idea that not all of these cases had to go and be introduced in. It really only needed to be the two. Did you discuss with them that no matter if it's 2 or all 8, it was going to have the same outcome?
Yeah, so when we have cases with multiple victims, that's one of the conversations that we always have, is that we may try one of them, we may try 2, we may try more than 2, and if we're going to plea them, we may plea 1 or 2 or 3, but we're going to make sure everybody knows what cases are pleading and how much time the defendant's going to do, and then if any cases will be dismissed as a part of that plea, which ones those will be, so that everybody understands how it's going to work when we get to court beforehand.
Obviously, we talked about this last week with Mr. Vance. How do you feel about the outcome of this case? You know, we want to get people in prison when things like this happen, especially when there's charges like this. How do you feel about the outcome?
You know, we're grateful for the outcome as far as the defendant going to prison. That's where he needs to be. He needs to register as a sex offender, which he's going to do. It's a case where we would like more prison time. I think most people see a case like this, they see the headline, they want more time. We agree, but we have to balance that with putting the victims through a trial, and so we talk to those victims ahead of time to talk about what kind of trauma would happen if they went through the trial. We're happy to do that as far as our end, but we want to make sure our victims are prepared for that. And we also have to weigh what is I think a jury might do in a case like this. It's easy to think what the right number is from a headline, but it's a lot harder when you get into trial and you see all of the specific facts.
And talk about how difficult that this would have been for victims having to go through a trial like this with as many cases as you had. Would this have been one of the more tougher cases that you guys would have had to put out in terms of information that would have been put out there?
You know, when we pick juries on cases like this, one question we ask is who wants to get up in front of a bunch of strangers and talk about their sexual experiences? And of course, nobody wants to do that. Certainly, people who've been victimized and traumatized don't want to do that. And unfortunately, that's what the Constitution requires. It requires them to get on the stand in front of a room full of strangers, potentially the media, and talk about the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And we do that, and we do that to get justice, but we also have to balance the victim's interests and the exposure they face when we're talking about a plea deal that's actually going to result in prison time and sex offender registration.
And did you hear from any of the victims that wanted to still have it go to trial and were not fully okay with it ending in a plea deal?
At the end of the day, after we reached this agreement, all of our victims understood, and they felt like it was a good trade-off for what we could potentially gain if we went to trial versus what they would have to go through.